higher liability limits. I was trained and I talk about higher liability limits across the board. I recommend 100, 300 across the board, but there's times where that's not necessarily applicable. Can you tell me a little bit about who needs higher limits and even higher? Like when I have people who do 500,000 combined single limits or 250. Um, how do you know how much, is really needed from the perspective of if they have an accident and they come to be your client?
In the end of the day, first, let's clarify to make sure we're all on the same page. We're talking about automobile insurance here. And when you talk about 100, 300, you're talking about having $100,000 available to you per accident for bodily injury coverage, and per person, and $300,000 per accident. So the most your insurance company under that policy with that coverage would pay would be $100,000 to any given person and $300,000 total. So if you had 5 people, they couldn't each get $100,000. That would be over the $300,000. The most they would pay out to those 5 people if they were all injured in the same accident would be $300,000. So 100, 300 is actually very good coverage compared to what we typically see from my view of the world so often. The unfortunate thing here in Florida is that bodily injury is not required by state law for insurance agents such as yourself when somebody buys an automobile policy. The only thing you have to sell them is PIP, personal injury protection, and property damage. So bodily injury is something sometimes people think, oh, I don't really need a lot of that because it's not required by law. Well, that's not really true. What you want to have when you buy bodily injury coverage is enough coverage to pay for somebody else's damages should you cause an accident, because that's what bodily injury coverage is for. When you buy an automobile policy, you buy multiple coverages. I mentioned PIP, that's a coverage, property damage, that's a coverage, and bodily injury, that's a different coverage, all under the same policy. So they pay for different things. The property damage, for example, is going to pay for the other person's car should you have caused an accident. It's going to pay for their repair and or replacement of their vehicle. Bodily injury is going to pay for medical bills past and future, lost wages past and future, and pain and suffering past and future for any injuries you've caused to somebody that's when you've been in a crash. Now, having said that, how much do you need? Typically, we think of insurance as designed to protect you so somebody can't come after your personal assets. If you really have no personal assets, you have a house maybe, or you're just renting, or and you've got no bank account of substance. You've got a checking account, but you live paycheck to paycheck, and you've got a savings account, but it's less than $5,000 as a general balance, and that's all the assets you have, then probably you don't need a 100, 300 policy, right? If you get in an accident and you cause somebody a ton of damage and they need $100,000, the downside is you're not going to have the assets or the coverage to pay for that injury. But you're also going to not have anything that they can come after. So 100, 300 is great coverage, but we have options for lower coverage. 1020 is pretty much the lowest I've ever seen any insurance company sell, but you can buy a 2550 policy, and those policies are also way more affordable than a 100, 300 policy and might be the appropriate fit depending on a person's finances and where they're at with their assets. On the other hand, if you've got somebody that has a vacation house, that's not going to be protected by somebody that's coming after you that has a judgment against you or that you owe money to, or somebody that has significant assets in other accounts that are attachable. So while Florida is a debtor's haven and you can't come after people for a lot of stuff, those types of accounts that I just described and those assets, boats, vacation houses, are generally going to be something that we can come after if we need to make a collection. So those people are going to want to have higher policy limits and possibly even an umbrella policy to protect themselves and their assets.